Opening hook. Have you ever noticed how even people with great wealth sometimes carry the heaviest burdens? There's an old story about a wealthy merchant who owned vast treasures of gold and silver. To the outside world, he had everything one could dream of. Yet every night, he lay awake in fear of being robbed, fear of losing his fortune, fear that his family might turn against one another over money. One day, this troubled man encountered the Buddha. The Buddha told him something simple, yet life-changing. True wealth is not measured by the gold in your hands, but by the heart that knows contentment, knows how to preserve, and knows how to use things wisely. Suddenly, the merchant felt lighter, as if a heavy chain had been removed from his chest. And isn't that story still true for us today? We live in an age overflowing with material abundance. Stores are open 24/7, advertisements follow us everywhere, and with just a few clicks on our phone, we can buy almost anything we desire. Yet, despite this abundance, how many of us truly feel at peace with what we have? How many of us wake up at night worried about bills, debts, or simply the pressure to keep up with a lifestyle that drains more than it fulfills? Here's the paradox: the more options we have, the more restless our minds become. We chase the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next symbol of success, hoping it will quiet our anxiety. But as the Buddha's teaching reminds us, it is not the next thing that makes us wealthy. It is the wisdom to know what is enough. Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you bought something and felt true, lasting happiness from it? Not just the quick excitement of a new gadget or a fashionable outfit, but a deep sense of peace and satisfaction. Chances are, those moments are rare. Because genuine peace doesn't come from possession, it comes from conscious living. Saving and mindful spending are not about depriving yourself or living in fear of the future. They are about freedom. When you know how to save, you free yourself from constant worry. When you spend with awareness, you free yourself from the trap of impulse and regret. Every dollar you use wisely becomes a step toward a lighter, freer life. Imagine for a second, if you could use your money in a way that not only supports your needs, but also gives you peace of mind, wouldn't that feel like true wealth? Wouldn't it feel richer than any gold locked away in a vault? This is what being wealthy without debt of suffering really means. It's not just about numbers in a bank account. It's about a state of mind, a balance between knowing how to preserve what you earn, how to use it consciously, and how to let go of the endless craving for more. So, as we begin this journey together, I want to invite you to reflect: what does wealth mean to you? Is it the accumulation of things, or is it the ability to live free from the weight of fear, worry, and endless desire? Because when we understand that true richness comes from within, from a heart that knows enough, then saving and mindful spending stop being restrictions, and instead become pathways to a life of peace, stability, and genuine happiness. Saving is not stinginess. Let's start with a simple but important idea. Saving money does not mean being stingy. In fact, saving is an art, a way to preserve not only your wealth, but also your energy and your peace of mind. It's about understanding what truly matters, and knowing what is necessary versus what is merely a fleeting desire. Think about it this way: have you ever bought something on impulse and later felt a pang of regret? That moment, when the excitement fades and you realize the item didn't really add value to your life, is exactly what separates unnecessary spending from mindful saving. A person who practices saving knows the difference between what they truly need and what society convinces them they want. On the other hand, being stingy is rooted in fear. People who hoard or refuse to spend out of anxiety are often trapped in a cycle of worry. They cling to their money, thinking it will protect them from all possible misfortune. But this kind of holding on doesn't bring freedom, it brings stress. It limits life and keeps the mind in constant tension. It's like carrying a heavy backpack everywhere you go, filled with coins you're afraid to spend. Saving, in contrast, is liberating. It allows you to plan for the future without living in fear. It gives you the ability to handle unexpected challenges, invest in your growth, or even help others without feeling drained. And here's the beautiful thing: the energy and wisdom you gain from saving consciously often come back to you in ways money alone cannot measure. You start to notice patterns in your spending, to see clearly what supports your life versus what distracts it. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine two people with the same income. One spends impulsively, buying every trend or gadget that catches their eye. The other evaluates each choice carefully, asking, "Do I really need this? Will this serve me or just momentarily satisfy me?" Over time, the second person not only accumulates resources, but also enjoys a lighter, freer mind. They are not weighed down by regret or debt. They are free to act from choice rather than compulsion. So here's a question for you. Next time you reach for your wallet, pause and ask yourself, am I buying this because I truly need it, or because I am trying to fill a gap in my mind? Am I saving to protect myself, or am I holding on out of fear? Saving is not about deprivation. It's about clarity, freedom, and intentional living. It's a practice that allows you to protect what matters, plan for the future, and ultimately live without being enslaved by the next impulse or desire. In other words, saving is wisdom in action. It nourishes both your life and your mind. Remember, true abundance is not just having more, it's knowing how to hold, how to use, and how to let go. And that is the first step toward being wealthy in a way that doesn't chain you to fear or regret. Spending is like planting seeds. Have you ever thought about money as more than just a tool for buying things? Imagine every dollar you spend as a tiny seed. Every choice you make with your money is like planting that seed in the soil of your life. What you plant determines what grows. If you spend impulsively, chasing fleeting pleasures or satisfying cravings, it's like planting weeds. Those weeds grow into stress, regret, and frustration. You might feel a short burst of happiness, but it quickly fades, leaving you wishing for more, trapped in a cycle that never ends. On the other hand, when you spend consciously on things that truly matter, that nurture your well-being or support others, you are planting seeds of joy, peace, and abundance that can flourish over time. The Buddha said, "Merit is sown by the purity of your intentions." In other words, it's not just about what you spend on, but the mindset behind it. A dollar spent out of kindness, generosity, or thoughtful necessity carries a completely different energy than a dollar spent out of greed, fear, or habit. Think of it as the difference between a seed planted in fertile soil versus one dropped on dry pavement. It may exist, but it won't grow. Let me give you an example. Imagine you have a choice. You can spend $50 on another trendy gadget that will probably sit unused in a month. Or you can spend that $50 on a friend in need, on a course that helps you grow, or even on a simple act of self-care that nourishes your mind and body. One choice plants weeds, the other plants fruit. Over time, the fruit-bearing choices accumulate, creating a life that feels abundant, even if your bank account isn't exploding. Here's a question for you. If money is a seed, what kind of garden are you growing? Are you unintentionally filling your life with clutter, stress, and anxiety? Or are you carefully planting intentions that will bring long-lasting happiness and peace? The beauty of this perspective is that spending becomes a form of mindfulness. You begin to see each transaction not as a mundane act, but as a conscious decision, a tiny vote for the kind of life you want to create. And when your spending aligns with your values, every purchase becomes meaningful, every choice becomes empowering. So, remember this: wealth isn't just the number in your account, it's the quality of what your money cultivates in your life. Like a gardener tending to seeds, every thoughtful choice you make can blossom into joy, wisdom, and peace. The money itself is just the tool, your intention is what determines the harvest. Next time you reach for your wallet, pause for a moment and ask, what am I planting here? Will this choice nourish my life, or will it create weeds I'll have to deal with later? Spending with awareness is not restrictive, it's liberating. It transforms everyday transactions into acts of wisdom, and over time, these small seeds grow into a life rich not just in money, but in meaning. Knowing enough, the true treasure. Have you ever noticed that some people can be surrounded by wealth, yet they always seem restless, always chasing more? And then there are others who have far less, yet walk through life with a sense of peace and contentment. The difference isn't in the number in the bank account, it's in the mind. It's the ability to know enough. Knowing enough is one of the simplest, yet most profound keys to wealth that lasts. It's the kind of wealth money alone cannot buy. When we understand what is truly sufficient for our lives, we stop running after every new trend, every new gadget, every comparison with others. We begin to see that the endless more promised by society doesn't actually bring happiness. It often brings anxiety, stress, and even debt. Think about it. How many times have you bought something because it was newer, faster, or more expensive than what you already had? Maybe you thought, this will make me happier, or others will respect me more. Yet, in a week, the excitement fades, and your mind searches for the next thing to fill that empty space. This cycle is the opposite of knowing enough. It's a constant chase without ever arriving. On the other hand, a person who knows enough approaches life differently. Saving and spending start from the mindset of awareness. Every choice is considered. Do I really need this? Will this bring genuine value, or just temporary pleasure? Knowing enough is not about deprivation, it's about discernment. It's the freedom to pause, to choose, and to live without being pulled by endless cravings. Here's a personal observation. When I started practicing this mindset in my own life, I realized I could enjoy the things I already had far more deeply. I didn't need the latest phone or the trendiest outfit to feel a sense of abundance. The simple pleasure of a quiet morning, a nourishing meal, or a meaningful conversation became far more satisfying than any material acquisition. That's the real treasure, contentment that no one can take away. Ask yourself, if you had everything you truly needed, what more would you want? Could you be happy with less, if less gave you freedom, clarity, and peace? That question is at the heart of mindful saving and spending. True wealth begins when we learn to stop, when we learn to know enough, and when we resist the pull of constant comparison. So, remember this, being rich is not about having the most. It's about being satisfied with enough. About protecting your mind from the endless cycle of desire. When you know enough, even a small amount becomes a source of joy and security. That is the kind of treasure that grows, quietly, steadily, and abundantly within. Managing wealth like you manage the mind. Have you ever noticed how people who struggle with focus, self-discipline, or emotional balance often struggle to manage their finances as well? There's a reason for that. Our outer world, our money, our possessions, our resources, often mirrors our inner world. If the mind is restless, impulsive, or uncontrolled, wealth can slip through our fingers just as easily as it flows in. Managing your money is not just about budgets, spreadsheets, or investments. It starts with the mind. When you practice self-discipline, mindfulness, and clarity, these qualities naturally translate into better financial decisions. You begin to see where your resources are being wasted, where you are overindulging, and where your money can actually serve you and your loved ones. Think about it. Someone who reacts impulsively, buying things when stressed or chasing trends to feel successful, often finds themselves in cycles of debt or regret. Their financial situation reflects the chaos within. Conversely, someone who cultivates awareness, patience, and self-control approaches money like a trusted tool, not a source of anxiety. They ask themselves, do I really need this? Will this support my life and values before making choices? That simple pause can make a world of difference. Here's an example from everyday life. Imagine two people receive the same unexpected bonus at work. One immediately splurges on luxury items, feeling temporary joy but little long-term gain. The other pauses, reflects, and allocates the money thoughtfully, some for savings, some for investing in personal growth, some for helping others. Over time, the second person not only grows their wealth, but also strengthens a sense of security and purpose. Their financial stability mirrors the discipline and clarity of their mind. This principle is not just about money, it's a reflection of life itself. When you train the mind through mindfulness, meditation, or simply conscious living, you naturally cultivate the habits and wisdom needed to manage all forms of wealth. Your possessions, your time, your energy, they all respond to the stability and insight you bring internally. Ask yourself, how aligned are your financial habits with your inner state? Are you spending impulsively because your mind is unsettled? Or are you making intentional choices rooted in awareness? The more your inner world is calm and clear, the more effortless it becomes to make decisions that protect and grow your resources, creating abundance without anxiety. So, remember this, money is not just something you manage, it's something you mirror. When you nurture your mind, when you practice discipline, awareness, and ethical living, your wealth naturally follows suit. True prosperity isn't only about accumulation, it's about harmony between what's inside and what's outside. And that alignment is the foundation of lasting security, freedom, and peace. Avoiding debt, freeing yourself from chains. Have you ever noticed that some people, even though they earn a lot, seem constantly stressed, anxious, or trapped? The Buddha observed this long ago when he said, "Even the wealthy, if in debt, suffer like the poor." Debt is more than a financial issue, it's a mental and emotional burden. It's a chain that binds you, limiting freedom and peace of mind, no matter how much money you have in the bank. Borrowing to fulfill desires or chase status is like tying a rope around your own ankles. Every purchase on credit, every loan taken for something that isn't essential, slowly tightens that rope. At first, it feels harmless, just a temporary boost. But over time, the weight grows heavier, and suddenly, you find yourself running in circles, trying to keep up with payments, interest, and obligations. It's a subtle form of slavery that most of us don't even notice until it becomes overwhelming. Here's a practical example. Imagine someone takes a loan to buy a luxury car or the latest gadgets. At first, it brings joy, admiration from peers, or a sense of accomplishment. But soon, the monthly payments and interest start dictating life decisions. Vacations are postponed, savings dwindle, and small joys feel overshadowed by the stress of repayment. Meanwhile, someone who chooses to wait, save, and spend consciously experiences a sense of freedom. They may have the same car eventually, but without the constant pressure and anxiety. Debt isn't inherently bad, sometimes it's necessary, like borrowing for education, or to start a business. But it should always be taken with awareness and responsibility. Ask yourself, do I really need this loan? Can I repay it without stress? Will this debt serve my life or enslave it? If the answer isn't clear, it's worth pausing and reconsidering. Avoiding unnecessary debt is also a form of self-respect. It's a way of saying, I will live within my means, honor my commitments, and protect my freedom. When you eliminate the chains of debt, you reclaim energy, time, and mental space to focus on what truly matters: growth, relationships, and genuine experiences. Think of it this way: money borrowed for wants often costs more than its price. It costs freedom, peace of mind, and emotional stability. But money earned, saved, and spent consciously brings a sense of security and empowerment that lasts far beyond the moment of purchase. So, the next time you consider borrowing for something that isn't essential, pause and reflect. Are you creating temporary happiness or long-term chains? True wealth is not just about what you have, it's about living free, unbound, and at peace with your choices. Avoid unnecessary debt, and you'll discover a richness that no loan or credit can ever provide. True wealth comes from sharing. When we talk about saving and managing money, there's a subtle truth that often gets overlooked. True wealth isn't just about keeping for yourself, it's about having enough to share. The Buddha taught that generosity creates blessings that multiply in ways we often cannot measure. Money, time, or resources held tightly can make the heart small, but shared wisely, they expand it. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how giving, even something small, can leave you feeling richer than any purchase ever could? Maybe it's helping a friend in need, supporting a cause you care about, or simply offering your time and energy to someone who could use it. That act of giving doesn't reduce your own abundance. It often increases it, in ways that matter far more than dollars or cents. Consider two people with the same income. One saves everything for themselves, focused solely on accumulation. Over time, they may have plenty of possessions, but a life that can feel narrow, anxious, and lonely. The other person saves with intention, but also gives with an open heart. They share a portion of what they have, whether with family, community, or charity. Their life is filled with connections, gratitude, and purpose. The blessings that return to them may not always be material, but they are deeply sustaining, often more than anything money alone can provide. Here's a practical way to think about it. When you save, set aside a part not just for emergencies or future purchases, but for giving. Even a small, intentional portion can make a huge difference, both for the receiver and for your own sense of fulfillment. It's a habit that trains the heart, reminding us that wealth is not only measured by what we hold, but by how willing we are to release. Ask yourself, what would happen if you approached money not just as a tool for security, but as a source of blessing for yourself and others? Could the simple act of sharing transform not only your finances, but your sense of purpose, your happiness, and the way you see the world? The key insight is this: richness is not in the volume of possessions, but in the willingness to share. A generous heart is fertile soil. Every act of giving plants seeds of joy, compassion, and abundance that inevitably return in unexpected ways. When we align saving with sharing, wealth becomes more than numbers. It becomes a reflection of a life lived consciously, with kindness, and with meaning. So, remember, saving is not selfish. Saving wisely prepares you to give freely. And true wealth, the kind that fills both the heart and life, is measured not by what we hoard, but by what we are willing to share. Mindful spending, healing the spending mind. Have you ever walked through a store, scrolled online, or flipped through an ad and felt an almost automatic pull to buy something? In today's consumer-driven world, it's easy to become unconscious shoppers, driven by fear of missing out, trends, or the illusion that possessions equal status. Each time we buy out of fear or habit rather than intention, we give away a piece of our freedom. Mindful spending is the antidote. It's about pausing before each purchase and asking yourself, do I truly need this? Will this add real value to my life? Or am I just feeding a temporary craving? When every dollar is spent with awareness, money stops being a chain that controls us and becomes a tool that supports our life, growth, and well-being. Think about it. How often have you bought something because everyone else had it, or because a flashy ad promised instant happiness? The excitement fades quickly, leaving behind only clutter, debt, or regret. Mindful spending, however, transforms that dynamic. It creates space for intention, for alignment between what we buy and who we are, and for a sense of peace that goes beyond possessions. Every dollar becomes a conscious choice, a reflection of values rather than impulses. Here's a real-world example. Imagine you're tempted by the latest smartphone release. Instead of rushing to buy, you pause and consider, do I really need an upgrade? Will this phone improve my life meaningfully, or am I buying it because everyone else has it? That pause, simple as it sounds, gives you control. You may decide to wait, save, or redirect that money towards something that genuinely matters, whether it's an experience, education, or giving to someone in need. That is how spending becomes an act of mindfulness. Mindful spending also heals the mind. It interrupts the cycle of craving and dissatisfaction, reduces stress about money, and cultivates a deeper appreciation for what we already have. Over time, this practice builds financial confidence, emotional resilience, and a sense of freedom that no ad, sale, or trend can ever give. Ask yourself, if every dollar you spend reflected awareness and care, how would your life feel? More peaceful, more empowered, more aligned with your values. That is the essence of conscious spending. It's not about restriction or deprivation, but about reclaiming control, honoring your priorities, and transforming money from a source of stress into a vehicle for freedom, growth, and joy. So, the next time you reach for your wallet, remember, every purchase is a choice. Choose with mindfulness. Choose with intention. And in doing so, let each dollar heal your mind, nurture your values, and create a life of freedom and purpose. Using wealth wisely, planting seeds of blessing. Have you ever thought of money as more than just currency? Imagine it as water, powerful, life-giving, but also capable of destruction if misused. Money, like water, can either nourish life or wash it away, depending on how it's directed. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that wealth, when used wisely, is a source of blessings not only for ourselves, but for the world around us. Think about it this way: when money is invested in learning, personal growth, health, or acts of kindness, it multiplies its value. Each dollar becomes a seed, planted into fertile soil, creating a harvest of knowledge, vitality, and joy. But when money flows aimlessly, spent on fleeting desires, waste, or harm, it becomes like a flood, leaving regret and emptiness in its wake. Here's a practical example. Consider two people earning the same income. One spends impulsively on luxury items or entertainment that offers short-term pleasure. The other allocates a portion for education, health, and charitable deeds. Over time, the second person doesn't just accumulate material wealth, they cultivate wisdom, resilience, and a legacy of goodwill. Their resources work like rivers, nourishing the present while preparing a fertile future. This principle applies in everyday decisions. Investing in courses, books, or skills enhances your capacity to earn and live meaningfully. Spending on health, exercise, nutritious food, mindfulness practices strengthens both body and mind, reducing future suffering and medical costs. Giving to causes that help others creates ripples of compassion that often return in unexpected ways. Each act is a conscious choice, a direction of the river that determines whether it nurtures or destroys. Ask yourself, if every dollar you spent could be a seed of blessing, where would you direct it? How could your money support not just your comfort, but also growth, learning, and kindness? The beauty of this perspective is that wealth becomes a tool for meaningful living. It's no longer just numbers in an account, it's a medium for cultivating abundance in life, heart, and spirit. Ultimately, money is not inherently good or bad. Its impact depends on the intention behind its use. When used wisely, it becomes a source of nourishment and joy, creating prosperity that reaches beyond the present moment. The wealth that builds knowledge, health, and virtue grows steadily, enriching both today and tomorrow. So remember, direct your resources like rivers to fertile fields. Let your money serve learning, well-being, and kindness. That is the way to cultivate true richness, a wealth that nourishes not only your life, but also the world around you. Every thoughtful choice is a seed of blessing, and in nurturing it, you make the present abundant and the future bright. The greatest wealth, a debt-free mind. We often chase wealth in the world, believing that possessions, accounts, or assets define our success. Yet, anyone who has experienced the instability of material wealth knows that it constantly shifts, markets fluctuate, investments rise and fall, and belongings can be lost or damaged. True, lasting wealth, the kind that cannot be taken away, exists not in what we hold outside, but in the state of our mind. The Buddha taught that the mind is the greatest treasure. A mind free from attachment, free from debt to desire, free from hatred or resentment, is a wealth beyond measure. Imagine a life where your inner world is stable, where you don't need to chase endless wants, where grudges don't tie you down. That is the kind of abundance that cannot be shaken by economic crises, social pressures, or personal losses. Think about it in practical terms. A person may own a luxurious home or expensive car, but if they constantly desire more, feel envy toward others, or carry unresolved anger, they are in debt to emotions and cravings. That debt creates anxiety, stress, and a sense of insufficiency that money cannot fix. Meanwhile, someone with modest means, but with a heart free from attachment, worry, and resentment, experiences a kind of richness that transcends the material world. Their life is lighter, their decisions clearer, and their joy more enduring. Here's a simple reflection: every time we give in to unnecessary desire, cling to anger, or cultivate envy, we take on invisible debts that weigh down the mind. These debts cannot be repaid with money. They demand awareness, forgiveness, and conscious living. On the other hand, practicing contentment, compassion, and mindful letting go clears the inner ledger. Every act of release, every moment of gratitude, every choice to let go of grudges is like depositing into an account that never loses value. Ask yourself, if your inner mind were entirely debt-free, how would life feel? What would it mean to live without owing anything, to desire nothing that causes suffering, to release every grudge, to rest in simplicity? That state is the ultimate security, the greatest freedom, the richest treasure. True wealth, therefore, is not counted in dollars, possessions, or titles. It is measured by the clarity, peace, and freedom of your mind. A debt-free mind creates space for joy, generosity, and serenity. It allows you to face life's uncertainties with equanimity, knowing that no external loss can diminish what you carry within. So, remember, cultivate your inner treasury. Release attachment, dissolve resentment, and live free from the debts of desire. That is the highest form of wealth, the kind that endures, nourishes, and radiates abundance from the inside out. Living simply, lasting wealth. When we think of wealth, our minds often jump to possessions, luxury, and abundance in material terms. Yet, the Buddha and his disciples lived simply, relying on a humble bowl of rice, yet their hearts overflowed with compassion and wisdom. Simplicity, they teach us, is not about deprivation, it's a conscious choice that creates freedom, clarity, and long-term well-being. Living simply means aligning life with what truly matters, rather than what society or advertising tells us to desire. It's about recognizing that endless accumulation often comes with hidden costs, stress, anxiety, clutter, and distraction. By choosing simplicity, we remove those burdens and make space for focus, presence, and inner wealth. It's a kind of richness that cannot be measured in dollars, but is felt deeply in daily life. Think about your own habits. How often do we buy things we don't need, chasing trends, or the approval of others? Every unnecessary purchase is a small form of bondage. It ties us to stress, bills, and fleeting satisfaction. Conversely, someone who lives simply, saves mindfully, and spends consciously is free from such chains. Their resources work for them, not against them, creating a life that is abundant without excess. Here's a practical example. Imagine two people. One lives surrounded by possessions, constantly upgrading, replacing, or maintaining them. They may appear wealthy, but the mental and financial load is heavy. The other person chooses simplicity, mindful spending, thoughtful saving, and intentional living. They may own less, but their mind is lighter, their time freer, and their joy more consistent. Their wealth is not just in what they have, but in the freedom to live fully, without stress or attachment. Simplicity also nurtures gratitude. When we reduce unnecessary wants, we notice and appreciate the abundance that is already present, our health, relationships, knowledge, and the small comforts of everyday life. It creates a cycle of contentment and ease, reinforcing mindful spending and thoughtful saving, which together cultivate lasting wealth. Ask yourself, what would life feel like if every choice reflected simplicity and mindfulness? Could you feel richer, freer, and more fulfilled with less, rather than more? This is the paradox of true wealth. The less we cling to, the more we gain. By living simply, saving consciously, and spending with intention, we create a life of enduring abundance, a wealth that nourishes both the present moment and the long-term journey. So, embrace simplicity. Let go of unnecessary burdens. Save wisely, spend mindfully, and find joy in what truly matters. That is how wealth becomes lasting, freedom becomes real, and life becomes deeply, quietly abundant. Conclusion: the true wealth. In our world, many people spend their lives chasing gold, bank accounts, and material possessions, believing that wealth is measured by what we own. Yet, the Buddha teaches a deeper truth. True wealth is richness of heart, wisdom, and virtue. It is not counted in coins or assets, but in the quality of life, the freedom of the mind, and the blessings we cultivate. Saving wisely and spending consciously is not merely about building financial security. It is a way to protect the true treasures of life. Every mindful decision shields us from the debts of desire, stress, and regret. When we spend with intention, we convert money from a source of bondage into a tool that nourishes growth, well-being, and joy. When we save with care, we create stability, but also the capacity to give, share, and support others. Imagine the inner world of a person who practices this mindful approach. Their mind is peaceful because it is free from the chains of endless craving. They are wealthy because they know contentment. They are abundant because they can enjoy what they have, without comparison or envy. And every act of sharing amplifies that wealth, creating ripples of happiness that extend far beyond themselves. Ask yourself, what would life look like if every choice, every dollar saved, every dollar spent, was made with awareness, purpose, and compassion? How much lighter, freer, and more joyful would your life feel? This is the essence of true wealth. It grows not through accumulation, but through intention, wisdom, and generosity. It is a richness that cannot be taken away, a freedom that cannot be stolen, and a joy that does not fade. So, remember the Buddha's timeless guidance. When the mind is calm, we are wealthy. When we know enough, we are abundant. When we share freely, we become immortal in the happiness we plant for all beings. True wealth is not in what you hoard, it is in how you live, how you love, and how you cultivate blessings in your life and the world around you. Let your heart be rich, your mind be wise, and your actions generous. That is the path to freedom, lasting happiness, and a life of authentic abundance.